And we are back. The first thing you want to do is press him here. That's because you, how did you put it, pay your respects once a month? Yeah, that's right. That and one more thing. That locker happens to be mine. What? What do you mean? I mean what I said. Aw, getting a bit sentimental on us, are we? Apparently. Okay, so that's updated in the court record. Yay. Bull crap. So then, what about this bloody the bloody handprint? Was it mine? It's no mystery. Please explain. My locker is covered with my fingerprints. It just so happened... Okay, when I talk with this guy, I just do an automatic southern accent. I cannot help it. The chances of that happening are 1,000,000 to 1. On the contrary, one could argue just the opposite. The chances of that are not happening are 1,000,000 to 1. Get one thing straight, partner. You ain't gonna get no reward from me with a mere fingerprint. You wanna know why? Okay, seriously, I'm not even trying to do the southern accent. Unrelated. They're as different as night and day. Kinda like cereal and cereal. One's got to do with breakfast, while the other one's a type of murder. He's right, although seemingly alike, they're totally different. I don't see what homonyms have to do with this. Or didn't you know that the murderer was wearing gloves? Maybe... I want to kind of, but not really. I'm just gonna press him here. How do you know that? I may be a loner, but I still do my job. I keep up on the reports. There was a blood stain at the scene, thought to be left by the murderer. That's right. It was found on Detective Gumshoe's locker. However, no fingerprints were detected on that handprint. Oh yeah, I think we tried that too. Logical. The picture? This seal of blood? In the desert, just like food for buzzards. Ugh. There's only one reality, and it's this. Security tape. So long as my trail isn't in there, you can't say otherwise. This isn't getting us anywhere, Mr. Wright. Please consider carefully where you're going to with this cross-examination. Yes, Your Honor. Now then, continue your testimony, Officer Marshall. Too bad it wasn't me in that video, right, partner? Wrong! You just did yourself in. Or not. Or I'm stupid. I'm an idiot. I just did myself in. I lost points, oh well. What do you mean by that? You want the time you did this crime, isn't that right, partner? If so, that video is the only direct evidence you have. But that video is next to useless. It's full of blind spots. Blind spots? Places you can't see. The camera's panning back and forth, the floor isn't shown. If someone was familiar with the camera's position, he could leave the room without being caught on tape. We don't have time for your speculations, Mr. Wright. Well, Mr. Wright, if you can show us evidence in this video that indicates Officer Marshall was present, do so now. Is there evidence? I think so. Very well. Allow me to point out your mistake, Officer Marshall. Tread carefully, Mr. Wright, or you might wind up being the one making the mistake. Right, then let's have another look at the video. Show us the incriminating... Simple. Just gotta speed, 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 speed. Okay, so we've already determined that it couldn't have been Detective Goodman. I mean, yeah, it couldn't have been Goodman that I entered. But, right here, I think. I think this is it. Bringing our attention back to the security camera is a mistake I'm afraid you'll not soon forget, Officer Marshall. The days are short in Texas, and so are tempers. Could you sum up what you have to say in 8 words or less? Very well. You can clearly be seen in this video. Exactly 8 words. Not bad, partner. The key lies in a certain locker shown in the video. See, this locker has a white cloth sticking out? This is the witness's locker. Now then, let's rewind the video a bit. Oh, the white cloth, it's gone. What's the meaning of this, Officer Marshall? When the crime took place, the white cloth wasn't there. Then, it suddenly appeared. There's only one explanation. Officer Marshall, you were in the evidence room at the time of the crime. What's more, you opened your locker when the camera was turned away. It would seem that's only... Hold your horses! Sorry, partner, but you got the wrong man. So what if my locker was open? That doesn't mean I'm the one who opened it. The murderer needed to hide something, so he opened the locker and stuck it in. Wow, he really isn't playing... I don't think he's playing dumb. He really doesn't know. This guy isn't just playing dumb. He really doesn't know. I hate to rain your parade, but you're the only person who could open that particular locker. Oh yeah? I call your bluff. You say I opened that locker? Now prove it. Here's an easy one. If you get this wrong, there's something wrong with you. A fingerprint sensor? We talked about this earlier today. The lockers can only be opened by the detectives they belong to. What kind of crazy talk is that? Well, Detective Gumshoe did mention something about this. In any case, the locks are not that obvious. There are even some people in the force that don't know about the fingerprint locks, blah blah blah. So, Sheriff, what do you have to say in 8 words or less? I only got 1 word for you, partner. No! Order! Witness, explain yourself. If this is a joke, it's the worst I've ever heard. I assure you, this is no joke, Officer Marshall. Now then, please tell us what you were doing in the evidence room at the time of the crime. Ole! Please answer the question. What is he now, a bullfighter? That's alright, Officer Marshall. I believe we can figure the rest out from here. We can? Have a look at these 4 plans. There is no place for someone to hide in the evidence room. Yet Officer Meekins didn't see Officer Marshall. If that's so, then where was the witness? It seems Mr. Wright has an answer. That's right, buddy. The only possible conclusion? Well then, let's hear it. Where was Officer Marshall at the time of the crime? Where was he? Take that! Officer Marshall was sitting right here. There, but that's where the victim, Detective Goodman, was. Correct, unless the man wasn't Detective Goodman. I believe the victim in this photo is Officer Marshall. It was you dressed up like Detective Goodman. But that's preposterous. Officer Meekins witnessed the detective at the crime scene. Once he saw the man's face, he'd know for sure. May I point out, though, that Officer Meekins did not know Detective Goodman. He also testified about the man's reaction when confronted. When I entered the evidence room, I asked him to show his card, sir. Yes, and how did Detective Goodman respond? He suddenly pulled a knife on me. Something about the officer's story puzzled me. If the man had his ID card, why didn't he just show it? Yes, he would have needed it to enter the evidence room, so he must have been carrying it. The answer is simple. He couldn't show it. As you can see, Detective Goodman's picture is on his ID card. Oh, I get it. If he showed that, his cover would have been blown. Officer Meekins would have realized the man wasn't Detective Goodman. Do you have anything to say to this, Officer Marshall? You've got quite imagination, partner. Everybody says that. We got a term for that. It's called circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence? Still, I think his mouth was moving while I was thinking. You're gonna have to do better than that to break a detective. Unless you got hard evidence proving I was dressed up as the victim. I can't say I particularly care for your uncooperative disposition. I can't say I care for your beard, but you don't see me complaining. Well, Mr. Wright, do you have any evidence? Any evidence proving beyond a shadow of doubt that Officer Marshall dressed up as the victim? Well, who am I kidding? I don't have anything like that. I can see the fear in your eyes, partner. Seems you're the one who couldn't take the desert heat. Ah, this isn't bad. This isn't good. Edgeworth, it looks like your lack of experience has finally been exposed. Run! I'll pass on to you what someone told me when I was just starting out. When you run into a wall with no place to go, return to the basics. The basics? For me, that's what Mia used to tell me. Outside the box, eh? I shouldn't look for proof that Officer Marshall was in disguise, but rather I should look for evidence that came about because he was in disguise. Why do you think this locker was open in the first place? What do you mean? There was no reason for Officer Marshall to open his locker at the time of the crime. Yet he did, despite the chance it might be discovered later as it been. Which means he didn't originally plan to open his locker. According to the defense's argument, Officer Jake Marshall dressed up as Detective Goodman at the time of the crime. Then after the crime was committed, he opened his own locker for some unknown reason. The fact that the white cloth is sticking out of the locker seems to indicate that he opened it in order to put the cloth inside. So, just what exactly is this piece of cloth? Perhaps the video again. Although, this is a very easy one too. I got this on my first try. I'm not saying something because I'm stupid. No, I'm kidding. I'm not that stupid. But the reason why he would have to open his locker is when he gets creeped upon and then, wait for it, right there. Right here. For some reason, you disguised yourself as Detective Goodman and entered the evidence room. I don't know what that reason was. Yet. However, something unexpected happened. Officer Meekins barged in on you. When asked to show your ID card, you pulled the knife on him. However, Officer Meekins panicked, and the white coat you were wearing was soiled with blood. A bloody white coat. You couldn't just walk out like that, so you hid the coat in your locker. Not bad, huh, partner? Now then, Officer Marshall, are you ready to tell us the truth? Looks like I underestimated y'all. I hope you're happy now, Mr. Edgeworth. 2 years ago, if you were only half as persistent then as you are today, we all wouldn't have to be here now, would we? Officer Marshall, tell the court what you did. All of it. Alright. Seems the time has come. I'm not trying to do the southern accent. It is just happening. No matter. So the supposed victim was really you. But there's one thing I still don't understand. Large quantities of blood traces were found on the floor of the evidence room. If no one was murdered, then how could that be? Officer Meekins managed to cut his own hand. My guess is he's the donor. It looked like too much blood for that. Okay, I think we're just gonna be pressing him here. Nothing all that special. So, what aren't you gonna let die? When you say itch, you mean... Do you even have to ask, partner? Cell 9 incident. 2 years have passed since that case was closed. It was going to completely end with the transferal that day. Not if I had anything to do with it. The incident's not over. But what did you hope to accomplish by sneaking into the evidence room? When a case is closed, only the detective who was in charge of it can look through the evidence. I wanted to have a look at it myself one more time, no matter what the cost. I don't care what anyone says, partner. That case is mine. Officer Marshall wasn't in charge of that investigation. Why does he care so much about it? That day was my last chance. That's why How'd you steal his ID card? Why did you disguise yourself as Detective Goodman? If I didn't make it look like Goodman was carrying out the evidence transferal, I'd be arrested for stealing evidence, which wouldn't get me anywhere. So you did it to fool the security camera. And the detective ID card? I stole that the morning of the incident. So that really was why Goodman started filling out the lost item reports. I returned his ID card. I left it on the floor in the prosecutor's office parking lot. The card I found. Ah. So essentially, you managed to succeed despite your lack of foresight. What do you mean, partner? I mean the fingerprint-activated lock, of course. No matter how well you disguise yourself, you can't change your fingerprints. Yenny Yogi can. By chance? Huh. You pulled a knife on Officer Meekins and tried to drive him off? Let's just say I was a little surprised. I only planned on being there in the evidence room for no more than 5 minutes. I didn't think anyone would actually come during that short time. Officer Meekins certainly is a one-in-a-million type of person. Mistaking a detective for an intruder and demanding to be shown his ID? I'll have to think about a little more of his raise this year. When did Edgeworth get so much influence? Anyway, he threw himself at me and I ended up cutting him slightly. I'm sorry I had to turn out that way, with me knocking him out and everything. By the way, what happened to your knife? Oh, you mean this one? How much hair does he have? He keeps, like, cutting. So, you did your research beforehand. Those who got into the desert unprepared don't live long, partner. I didn't think it would make a difference, though. The security tape is erased every 6 hours. If all had gone as planned, no footage would have been left. However, you bloodied your coat in the struggle with Officer Meekins. If someone was in the security room when I came out, the jig would have been up. I opened my locker and stashed it in there. What was Officer Meekins doing during that time? What else? He was sleeping like a baby. So what you're saying is, on that day, but the blood found at the crime scene indicates a crime took place. What are you, blind? The victim shown in that tape is me, and I'm not dead yet, partner. So you stole the evidence from the locker. Actually, no I didn't. Why not? When I opened the locker, the evidence was already gone. What? Mr. Edgeworth, where is that evidence? It's still missing, Your Honor. That's weird. Queer. Someone else took the evidence beforehand? Officer Marshall, may I ask you one thing? Fire away, partner. It's a free country. Just remember, I'm also free to decide whether or not to answer. Why did you do this? Stealing a detective's ID card, injuring a police officer, this is no small offense. Moreover, you're an officer yourself. This will have serious consequences. It can't just be forgiven with a simple cut in salary. Not that salary cuts are ever a valid solution. Like I said, this isn't your case. This one's mine. And I'll do anything it takes to get an answer I'm satisfied with. The witness has an unusual amount of zeal. Let's hear more. No, I don't know why. That case was solved 2 years ago, wasn't it? That's the reason the evidence was stored in the evidence room. Joe Dark was convicted for those crimes. One thing I can say for sure, he deserved his sentence. I remember Joe Dark, the Joe Dark case. It involved serial murders, didn't it? I don't intend to complain about how it turned out. There's something that still bothers me. Something went down that trial. Something no one will talk about. What happened? I don't know. That's what I'm trying to find out. To present him the reason? I think I know what it is. I think I know why. Objection! Officer Marshall, I think I understand. I think I know why you care so much about the SL9 incident. Sounds like you've been sipping too much cactus juice, partner. I have the SL9 incident files here. The name, Marshall, is mentioned in here. In a list of murder victims. Neil Marshall. Are you related to this man? Neil Marshall? Yeah, I'm sure you've heard his name. 2 years ago, he received the same lousy prosecutor award you got. What? A prosecutor? He must be talking about the King of Prosecutors Award. Now I remember. Prosecutor Neil Marshall. He handled the SL9 case before I did. That's right, he was killed, and the case fell into your hands. But what's his relation to you? He was my brother. He was investigating the murders with Damon Gant, chief of police at the time. His southern accent went away. The group of detectives I was part of worked under them. We were desperate to prosecute the killer. Joe Dark. My brother fought Dark and was killed. That was the first time Dark left behind any evidence. That was all we needed. He was whatever that word is, and incarcerated. The case was finally closed, at least according to the public records. What do you mean? My brother couldn't have been killed by Joe Dark. I knew my brother better than anyone. No one could have beaten him in a fight. And that's it? That's your reason for your insane actions? There was more to my brother's death than what the records say. No matter how much you try and hide it, you can't fool me. Well, at least one thing's for certain. Now we know what happened at the police department on the day of a crime. That was the last day the SL9 case could be reopened. Not satisfied with this result. I don't even know. Officer Marshall planned to steal the evidence. Disguising himself as Detective Goodman, he entered the evidence room. Officer Meekins confronted him, so he rendered him unconscious and fled. Yes, this mystery has finally been cleared up. No murder took place at the police department that day. Uh-oh. The things that happen by chance never cease to amaze. At exactly the same time the murder at the prosecutor's office, this fake murder was going on at the police department. Oh, snap. Completely forgot about the murder. Which in turn means only one person could have committed the crime. Chief Prosecutor Lana Skye. But wait! A verdict wasn't reached in yesterday's trial. Which is why we examined the incident at the police department today. But there's only one reason the defendant was not convicted yesterday. That yet remained the mystery of the simultaneous murder at the police department. It seems to me, this boy's got the draw on you, partner. All the mysteries at the police department have been uncovered. No contradictions. Remain. The murder took place at the prosecutor's office. The only suspect is Lana Skye. There were no errors in the testimony of the witness, Angel Starr. If you have a response, make it one word or less. Arrgh! I rest my case. Frick, you got us. No, it seems the trial has reached its conclusion. There's no room for doubt. Well done, Mr. Wright. Thanks to you, I didn't need to waste my time just proving the alleged murder at the police department. Come on. Something happened. There's something else behind this. Now then, the time for the verdict has arrived. This court finds the defendant... What? Who was that? Emma? A what? What do you mean, Wright? Mr. Wright, are you this girl's guardian? Your Honor, in a sense. I don't want to leave any loose ends. You want a minute? I'll give you 3. What happened in that case? You mean the traces of blood found on Detective Gumshoe's locker? But no fingerprints were found on it, right? So that's what you were doing this whole time? Thanks for getting our hopes up for nothing. Is that all? and I'm just an attorney. But me? Oh boy. Time's up. Now then, Mr. Wright, with regard to the incident at the police department, does any reasonable doubt remain? It appears the defense is troubled by the other blood mark. Looking at this floor plan, a handprint was discovered around here. Is there a problem with this? Please answer my question, Mr. Wright. We don't have all day. Yes, Your Honor. If ever I needed to concentrate, it's now. What could be wrong with the handprint on Detective Gumshoe's locker? Could there be something I'm missing? There's a problem. This handprint left at the crime scene clearly shows a contradiction. The only thing that seems clear is your grasping, Mr. Wright. You've been staring pretty intently at those floor plans. Tell me, is there a problem with them? Take a good look at these floor plans. Something is missing. Missing? You mean something hasn't been drawn there? Yes, something that, when drawn, will completely change the meaning of the blood mark. Let us pray the defense isn't simply trying to buy time. Very well, Mr. Wright. Question is, which item can prove something is missing in the floor plans? Which item? Well, it would pretty much have to be one thing, I think. Oh, I guess I was wrong. What about that piece of plywood? Oh, I was right. The Blue Badger, mascot of the police force, defender of truth, guardian of proof. Explain yourself, Mr. Wright. Please look at the floor plans of the crime scene. The Blue Badger is not here. So watch what happens when we put him in. This is where he was dancing at the time of the crime. Well, what? That's right. So long as the Blue Badger is dancing here, it would be impossible to place a handprint at this spot in the locker. What? So that means, just what exactly does that mean? It means it can't be done. What are you saying? Blood traces were undeniably found in that locker. Don't look at me. I didn't put it there. Oh, she's back again. So Meekins was the one who brought the Blue Badger to the evidence room, right? As he put it down, it would be impossible to leave a handprint on that locker. So that must mean this blood mark was left there before the Blue Badger was brought in? Just one moment. I will not allow such far-fetched balderdash in my courtroom. It may sound far-fetched, Your Honor, but it's the only possible explanation. On February 21st, in the police department's evidence room, blood was spilled not once, but twice. But how? One time was captured on this tape, taken by the security camera. Officer Meekins cut his hand, from which a trivial amount of blood fell. The problem is, the other time, someone bled prior to the struggle shown on this tape. It had to have been Detective Goodman when he was really murdered! That's ridiculous. I refute you. The murder portrayed in the security tape has been proven to be a fake. However, that does not explain the blood mark found in the locker. So then, assuming this murder you propose really happened, when did it take place? I demand you show evidence that proves it occurred. To surmise, the defense claims that, prior to Officer Meekins being cut by Jake Marshall, who was disguised as Detective Goodman, another incident took place in that evidence room. The blood mark on the locker proves this. Very well, then tell us, when did this first incident occur? Proof must be presented. Proof that shows when the first murder took place. There's only one piece of evidence that can show that. Now then, will the defense please present its evidence? What shows when the first crime took place? What, the only thing that really can? The ID record! If the crime took place inside the evidence room, then the perpetrator would have had to have entered the room. In order to do so, an ID card is required. An ID card? Oh! The ID card record! Officer Meekins brought the Blue Badger panel into the evidence room at, let's see here, 4:50 p.m. If the crime took place before that time, then it would be 4:50 p.m. Miles Edgeworth, just what have you done? I never figured you had the nerve, boy. Put off the act, witness. It doesn't take a lot of thought to figure out it couldn't have been me. Nope, I ain't getting it. I'm afraid I don't understand either. It's clear from the luminal blood test that was there. However, when the second crime took place, both Officer Meekins and Officer Marshall failed to notice the blood. That means the blood from the first crime was wiped away by the real murderer. I would have to have just had 10 minutes to murder the victim, carry his body away, and clean up the blood. Unfortunately, that's physically impossible. That would mean the crime must have taken place before Mr. Edgeworth entered the evidence room. Let's look at the chart again. There's only one other card for the rating, 7777777. Talk about a lucky number. But wait, that doesn't make sense. How could Officer Goodman have entered the evidence room? Since there's no record of his card being used beforehand, he must have entered along with the real murderer. That's the only plausible explanation. He went in with 777777! Mr. Edgeworth, please look into this ASAP! Find out whose ID number is 777777777. That's 17 too many, Your Honor. Unfortunately, I'm unable to look up the owner of that ID card. At least at present. What? Explain yourself, son. The ID number 777777 belongs to someone with a rank of captain or higher. Someone who is a so-called executive officer. We don't have the authority to inquire such a person's identity. But that's ridiculous. Just how... I'm not finished talking, Mr. Wright. There is one situation in which we can be granted such authority. If an official charge filed is... I can't read. An official charge? You're all alike, aren't you? With your cover-ups and your forgeries. That's how the prosecutor's office operates. I take pride in my work, Officer Marshall. I would appreciate it if you would keep your slander to yourself. Slander, is it? Okay. Let me ask a question. Yes? No, not to you. To her, the defendant sitting over there. Your own little executive. Lana? Don't be stupid. She's been charged with murder. Of course we've looked up her ID number. And it's not 777777. Don't play me for a fool, partner. That's not what I wanted to ask. All I want to know is one thing about that incident. The SL9 incident? Answer me this, Chief Prosecutor. In that trial 2 years ago, did you really use legitimate evidence? Do you need the witness to repeat his question, Chief Prosecutor? I heard him fine, Mr. Edgeworth. 2 years ago, I was in charge of the prosecution for that trial. At the time, we felt the powerlessness of the law. At least, I did. But Lana? I became a prosecutor in order to suppress crime with the law. But before I realized it, we were the ones being suppressed by the law. Defendant, just what are you saying? I'll ask you again, Chief Prosecutor. During that trial 2 years ago, did you really present all the evidence in court? Can you look me, an investigator in that crime, in the eye and say that you did? Chief Prosecutor, you didn't... I don't have to, Officer Marshall. Why don't you answer him? The act of crimes required drastic measures. That's just the way it is. We did what we had to, in order for him to get the verdict he deserved. But Lana! Even if it involved forging evidence. See? That's what I'm talking about. No! No! Order! 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 Lana's remark caused such a stir. The chaos in the courtroom could not be quelled. The conclusion of the trial would have to wait until the following day. That's the last day. Well, This was quite an action-packed episode, but time to wrap up this case investigation for the last time in the next episode. I will see you guys then.